The transmission arrived on a Tuesday morning, which in retrospect made the entire situation somewhat amusing. Commander Sarah Mitchell was nursing her third cup of coffee at the Kepler 442 research outpost when the communications array erupted like a holiday light display. Every screen in the control room blazed crimson. Every alarm that could conceivably activate began wailing in unison. Sarah nearly fumbled her mug. "What in the hell is happening?" she shouted over the cacophony. Lieutenant Park had already stationed himself at his console, fingers dancing across the holographic interface. His complexion had drained of color. "Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission across every possible frequency. It's overriding everything, even our secure military channels." Sarah rushed to his position. Who possesses that kind of broadcast capability? Park glanced up at her, and she could detect genuine fear in his expression. According to the signal origin, the Valdrath Imperium. The name sent a wave of cold through everyone present. The Valdrath Imperium was ancient, not merely old in the sense of a few centuries, old as in 10 millennia. They controlled nearly 1,000 star systems. Their empire stretched across a quarter of a known galaxy, and they had established a reputation for absolute ruthlessness toward anyone who obstructed their path. "Displayed on screen," Sarah commanded. The main monitor flickered, and suddenly they found themselves staring at something that resembled a hybrid between a reptile and a great cat. The creature stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in midnight blue scales that seemed to absorb light. Golden eyes stared out from the screen with an intensity that made Sarah want to retreat. The being wore elaborate armor that appeared more ceremonial than functional, adorned with symbols and decorations that likely represented thousands of years of military heritage. "I am High Strategos Krelnov, Supreme War Coordinator of the Valdrath Imperium," the creature announced. Its voice resonated deeply, translated automatically by universal language protocols. This message is directed to the primitive species that designates itself humanity. Sarah felt her jaw tighten. Primitive, right. Krelnov continued, apparently savoring his moment. "Your species has expanded into territories that fall within the buffer zones of the Imperium. This is unacceptable. You have violated ancient boundaries that have stood for millennia. Your ignorance is not an excuse." The screen changed, displaying images of the Valdrath military. Ships, thousands upon thousands of ships. Each one appeared massive, bristling with weaponry. Then came images of planets, dead planets, lifeless rocks that had once been inhabited worlds, now nothing but glass and ash. "The Valdrath Imperium has maintained galactic order for 10,000 years, Krelnov stated. "We have brought peace and stability to 847 star systems. 23 species have challenged our authority. 23 species no longer exist." Sarah felt Park tense beside her. She placed a hand on his shoulder, steady and calm. The display shifted again, showing a map of human-controlled space. 12 systems were highlighted in crimson. "You will withdraw from these systems within 72 hours. You will submit to Imperium oversight and governance. You will pay reparations for your territorial violations. The amount will be calculated based on your species' total economic output for the next 50 years. 50 years! Someone muttered behind Sarah. "That's insane." Krelnatha's golden eyes seemed to stare directly through the screen. "If you refuse these generous terms, the Imperium will have no choice but to eliminate your species entirely. We have done this before. We will not hesitate to do it again. You have no concept of the power we wield. Your primitive weapons cannot stand against forces that have conquered galaxies. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of fact." The transmission ended as abruptly as it had begun. For a prolonged moment, nobody in the control room spoke. Then Park exhaled slowly. "Ma'am, should I forward this to Terran Command?" "Already done," Sarah said, checking her own terminal. It went out on every channel. Everyone from Earth to the outer colonies received it. She paused, and it appears Command is already responding. The response from Admiral Rebecca Shaw arrived less than an hour later. Sarah gathered her staff to watch it together. Admiral Shaw appeared on screen, sitting casually in her command chair aboard the flagship Indomitable. She was a woman in her mid-50s with short gray hair, and the kind of face that had witnessed too much combat to be impressed by threats. She wore a simple uniform without any of the elaborate decorations the Valdrath seemed to favor. She looked directly into the camera and stated, "Message received and acknowledged. We'll see you in 72 hours. That was it. No elaborate speech, no counter-threats. Just a simple confirmation that humanity had heard the Valdrath and would be ready. Sarah found herself smiling despite the situation. That was so perfectly human. No drama, no waste of words, just a promise to show up. Within minutes, the response began spreading across human space, and that's when things became interesting. The memes started appearing almost immediately. Someone had already edited Krelnatha's face onto an angry cat. Another showed the Valdrath fleet with the caption, "Mom said it's my turn with the galaxy." A particularly creative individual had produced a video comparing the Imperium's dramatic entrance to a toddler's tantrum. Sarah's personal favorite was simple. A picture of Admiral Zhao's unimpressed face next to Krelnatha's threatening glare, captioned, "Tell me you've never fought humans without telling me you've never fought humans." The civilian networks were exploding with commentary. News anchors attempted to maintain serious expressions while discussing the threat, but you could see the disbelief in their eyes. Talk shows devoted entire segments to breaking down exactly how badly the Valdrath had miscalculated. "They think we're primitives," one military analyst said on the evening news. "They probably looked at our colony ships and research stations and assumed we're still in the early space age. They have no idea what our actual military looks like." Another expert, a retired general, was even more blunt. "The Valdrath have been fighting species that barely have fusion drives. We have gravitational field manipulation. We have AI-assisted targeting systems. We have weapons that move at significant fractions of light speed. This isn't going to be the fight they think it is." On military channels, the mood was different but equally confident. Veterans of the Proxima Wars were sharing old stories. The Proxima Wars have been brutal. Humans fighting humans with weapons designed to kill other humans. Bioweapons, nuclear weapons, AI-controlled drone swarms, kinetic bombardment. Every nasty trick that intelligent beings could devise, humans had tried on each other. "We spent 200 years perfecting the art of killing ourselves," one old sergeant said in a message that was shared 1,000,000 times. "These lizards have been beating up on species that don't even have railguns. They're in for a very bad day." Sarah watched all of this from her station on Kepler for 42 and felt something she hadn't expected. Not fear, not anxiety, just a calm certainty that humanity knew exactly what it was doing. The Terran Third Fleet didn't rush to defensive positions. They didn't panic. They didn't even seem particularly concerned. Admiral Zhao's ships maintained their standard patrol patterns. Supply runs continued as scheduled. Training exercises proceeded as planned. It was the most insulting possible response to the Valdrath ultimatum. Humanity had heard their threat and essentially shrugged. 72 hours suddenly seemed like a very long time to wait. High Strategos Krelnoth stood in the command center of the Eternal Dominion and tried to understand what he was seeing. Or rather, what he was not seeing. The humans had not moved. "Explain this to me again," he said to his intelligence officer, a younger Valdrath named Sorendex. "We issued our ultimatum 48 hours ago. Their deadline expires in 24 hours, and their fleet has done what exactly?" Sorendex pulled up the tactical displays showing the positions of all known human ships in the disputed territory. "Nothing, Strategos. The Terran Third Fleet remains in standard patrol formation. They have not recalled additional forces. They have not fortified their positions. They appear to be waiting." Krelnatha's tail lashed in confusion. Have they responded at all? Only the initial acknowledgement from their Admiral Zhao. Since then, silence. Their civilian networks show significant activity, but no military movements that our sensors can detect. One of Krelnatha's advisors, an old warrior named Thexler, spoke up. "Perhaps they are paralyzed with fear. We have seen this before. Some species simply freeze when confronted with overwhelming force." Another advisor nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, the Karath did the same thing. They received our ultimatum and simply stopped functioning as a military force. It made the conquest almost too easy. Krelnoth considered this. It made sense. Humanity was young. Their oldest colonies were barely 200 years old. They had encountered other species, but had never faced a true galactic power. The shock of learning they were not alone, that there were forces vastly stronger than themselves, must have been devastating. Very well, Krelna said. We will assemble the punishment fleet. 5,000 vessels should be more than sufficient. Thexler looked surprised. 5,000 strategos? We have never needed more than 1,000 ships to conquer a species. 5,000 seems excessive. It is meant to send a message, Krelnov replied. Not just to the humans, but to the entire galaxy. Let everyone see what happens to those who defy the Imperium. We will not simply defeat them. We will erase them so thoroughly that no species will dare challenge us for another 1,000 years. The orders went out immediately. 5,000 warships from across the Imperium began converging on the rally point. Each ship was massive by human standards, some stretching over 2 kilometers in length. They were armed with plasma lances that could melt continents. They had shields that could withstand direct nuclear strikes. They carried tens of thousands of Valdrath warriors, the elite fighter caste that had never lost a boarding action. The fleet assembled over the course of 20 hours, forming into the traditional Valdrath battle formation, the Phalanx. It was called, a formation that had been used for 7,000 years and had never been broken. Ships arranged in overlapping layers, shields creating a nearly impenetrable wall of energy. It was beautiful in its way, a testament to thousands of years of military tradition. Krelnov felt pride swelling in his chest as he looked at the assembled force. This was the might of the Imperium. This was the power that had brought order to the galaxy. Meanwhile, aboard the Indomitable, Admiral Rebecca Shao was having a very different kind of meeting. The hollow conference room showed the faces of 89 ship captains, each commanding one of the vessels in the Terran Third Fleet. The atmosphere was casual in a way that would have shocked the Valdrath. Captain Chun of the destroyer Persistence was eating a sandwich. Commander Jackson of the cruiser Defiant was drinking coffee from a mug that read, "I'm not arguing. I'm just explaining why I'm right." Several captains were clearly multitasking, reviewing data on secondary screens while listening to the briefing. "All right, people, listen up," Shao said, pulling up a tactical display. "Our friends from the Valdrath are bringing 5,000 ships. That's about a 56-to-1 numerical advantage." "Sounds fair," someone muttered, and there was scattered laughter. Shao allowed herself a small smile. "Terran intelligence has been busy. We've cracked their shield frequencies. We know their weapon systems. We understand their tactical doctrine, and the picture that emerges is interesting." She expanded the display, showing detailed scans of Valdrath technology. They're using directed energy weapons almost exclusively. Plasma lances, particle beams, stuff like that. Very powerful against unshielded targets or against other energy-based offenses. Their shields are optimized for this type of warfare. Captain Chin finished his sandwich and wiped his hands. "Let me guess, they've never fought anyone with kinetic weapons." "Worse than that," Shao replied. "According to intelligence reports, the most advanced species they've conquered in the last 3,000 years had early fusion drives and basic missile technology. Everything else was even more primitive. They've been beating up on civilizations that are barely space-capable." Commander Torres of the battleship Valiant spoke up. "So they have no experience with relativistic kinetic weapons, no experience with AI-assisted targeting, no experience with quantum-encrypted communications that they can't intercept." "Exactly," Shao confirmed. "Their entire military doctrine is based on fighting opponents who are technologically inferior. They rely on overwhelming firepower and traditional tactics that haven't changed in millennia." The captains were all paying full attention now. This wasn't going to be a desperate last stand. This was going to be a lesson in why you don't pick fights with species that have spent centuries perfecting warfare against themselves. "What about their numerical advantage?" someone asked. "Even with superior technology, 56-to-1 is pretty steep." Shao pulled up another display, this one showing firing solutions and kill ratios. "Our railgun slugs travel at 0.4 light speed. That's 40% of light speed, people. At that velocity, a 10-kilogram slug hits with the energy of a small nuclear weapon. Their shields literally cannot stop it. The physics don't work in their favor. She continued, our missiles can pull 800 gravities and use quantum entangled targeting. Their point defense is designed for much slower projectiles. Our simulations show we can achieve a 94% hit rate. Captain Chin was nodding slowly. So we don't need to get close. We can engage from long range where their energy weapons are less effective, and our kinetics have maximum impact. Correct. We engage at 500,000 kilometers. We fire until they break or retreat. We do not chase. We do not waste ammunition. We treat this like the target practice it is. There was a moment of silence as the captains absorbed this. Then Commander Jackson raised his coffee mug. To the Valdrath Imperium, they're about to learn a very expensive lesson. The other captains joined the toast, and Shao allowed the moment of levity. These were good people, experienced officers who had trained for decades. Many of them were veterans of the Proxima Wars, that brutal period when humanity had fought itself with everything from bioweapons to AI-controlled kill swarms. The Proxima Wars had nearly destroyed humanity. Entire colonies had been wiped out. Earth itself had come close to being rendered uninhabitable. But humanity had survived, learned, and emerged with military doctrine that was utterly ruthless in its efficiency. One more thing, Shao said, bringing the meeting back to focus. After we engage, the Valdrath are going to retreat. They're going to go back to their empire and tell everyone that humanity has powerful weapons. They're going to prepare a counterattack with even more ships. Let them, Captain Chen said. We got plans for that, too. Shao nodded. Yes, we do. But that's Phase 2. For now, we focus on Phase 1. Show them that their numbers don't matter. Show them that their ancient tactics don't work. Show them that humanity is not some primitive species. They can push around. She looked at each captain in turn. We didn't ask for this war, but we're going to finish it. Questions? There were none. Everyone knew what needed to be done. As the Hollow Conference ended and the captains returned to their ships, Shao sat alone in her ready room. She pulled up the intelligence reports one more time, reading through the details of Valdrath military history. 10,000 years of conquering weaker species. 10,000 years of never facing a real challenge. It made them confident, arrogant, even. They truly believed they were invincible. That arrogance was going to cost them everything. The Valdrath fleet arrived in the Kepler 442 system with all the ceremony and spectacle that 10,000 years of military tradition could provide. 5,000 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, the phalanx. Each ship took its designated position with practiced precision. Their shields activated simultaneously, creating a wall of shimmering energy that stretched for thousands of kilometers. The effect was designed to be overwhelming, to make any enemy lose hope before the first shot was fired. From the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, High Strategos Krelnoff watched his fleet deploy and felt satisfaction. This was the might of the Imperium. This was inevitable victory. Scan for human vessels, he ordered. The sensor officer worked his console for a moment, then looked up with confusion. Strategos, I am detecting 89 human ships. They are holding position at their previous coordinates. They have not moved. Krelnoff felt a flicker of irritation. They are still there? In the same position? Yes, Strategos. They appear to be waiting for us. One of the junior officers let out a hissing laugh. They have given up. They see our fleet, and no resistance is pointless. But Thexler, the old advisor, was frowning at his own display. Something is wrong. Their power signatures are unusual. Our sensors cannot properly classify their defensive systems. It does not matter, Krelnoff said. Open a channel. Let me speak to this Admiral Shao. The communication went through immediately. The main screen showed a simple human bridge, nothing like the elaborate command center of the Eternal Dominion. Admiral Shao sat in a plain chair, wearing a plain uniform. She looked almost bored. This is your final opportunity to surrender, Krelnoff said. You face 5,000 warships of the Valdrath Imperium. Your 89 vessels cannot possibly stand against us. Withdraw now and your species will be allowed to exist as subjects of the Imperium. Refuse, and we will destroy every human colony, Every human ship, every human world. Your species will be erased from history. Admiral Shao listened to translation, then leaned forward slightly. Negative. Come and take it. The channel closed. For a moment, Krelnoth just stared at the blank screen. Then his shock turned to rage. Destroy them. All ships. Advance and engage. The Valdraft fleet moved forward in their traditional formation, shields overlapping, creating a wall of force that had broken armies for thousands of years. They crossed into engagement range at 800,000 kilometers. Fire plasma lances, Krelnoth ordered. Hundreds of plasma beams lanced out from the Valdraft ships, each one carrying enough energy to melt through meters of solid armor. They struck the human fleet in a coordinated barrage that should have vaporized the first line of ships immediately. The beams hit something and dispersed. The energy just scattered, spreading out and dissipating harmlessly into space. What? Krelnoth stared at the display in disbelief. What are we hitting? The sensor officer was frantically checking his readings. I do not know, Strategos. There appears to be some kind of field around their ships, but it is not reading as a standard shield. Our plasma is being disrupted before it can reach the hulls. Fexler's scales had gone pale. Gravitational shearing. They are manipulating gravity fields to disperse our energy weapons. I have only read about such technology in theoretical papers. It should not be possible. The Valdraft fleet continued its advance, now at 600,000 kilometers. Officers were shouting updates, trying to understand what was happening. The humans still had not moved. They just sat there, waiting. Then, at 500,000 kilometers, the humans fired back. At first, nothing seemed to happen. There was no visible beam, no missile trail, nothing. Then Valdraft's ships on the leading edge of the formation simply exploded. Not damaged, not disabled. They just came apart. Huge warships disintegrating in bursts of metal and atmosphere. Report. Krelnoth roared. Kinetic impacts, the sensor officer said, his voice shaking. They are firing solid projectiles at extreme velocity. Our sensors barely detected them. Strategos, those projectiles are moving at 0.4 light speed. More ships exploded, then more. The human fleet was firing with methodical precision, each shot striking a different target. Every shot was a kill. Shields at maximum. Return fire, Krelnoth ordered. But the Valdraft shields, designed to stop energy weapons and slower missiles, did nothing against solid metal moving at relativistic speeds. The slugs punched through like the shields weren't even there. Each impact released energy equivalent to a nuclear detonation. Ships that had survived centuries of combat were torn apart in seconds. Then the missiles arrived. They appeared on sensors moving at impossible speeds, pulling accelerations that should have torn them apart. The Valdraft point defense systems opened fire, trying to intercept them. Some missiles were destroyed. Most were not. The missiles weaved through defensive fire like they could predict where the shots would be. Because they could. AI-assisted targeting. Quantum processors calculating trajectories millions of times per second, technology that the Valdraft had never encountered. Fusion warheads detonated throughout the Valdraft formation. Ships disappeared in balls of nuclear fire. Others were caught in overlapping blast zones, their shields overwhelmed by multiple simultaneous detonations. Krelnoth watched his fleet die. 200 ships gone. 500. 1,000. The numbers climbed with terrifying speed. His tactical display was a sea of red icons, each one representing a destroyed vessel. All ships, evasive maneuvers, break formation. But breaking formation just made it easier. The human targeting systems tracked each ship individually, adjusting fire patterns to maximize efficiency. The Valdraft fleet scattered, trying desperately to escape the killing zone. It didn't matter. The railgun slugs traveled faster than any ship could maneuver. The missiles hunted their targets relentlessly. Aboard the Indomitable, Admiral Shao watched the engagement with professional detachment. Her tactical officer called out updates in a calm, steady voice. Target Alpha, 3 destroyed. Target Alpha, 4 destroyed. Magazine at 87%. All systems nominal. Maintain firing pattern, Shao ordered. Prioritize command vessels and heavy cruisers. Captain Chen's voice came through on the tactical net. Persistence reporting 300 confirmed kills. Their formation is completely broken. They are in full retreat. Shao checked the chronometer. 14 minutes since the Valdrath fleet had opened fire. In those 14 minutes, 3,000 Valdrath warships had been destroyed. The survivors were fleeing in every direction, jumping to faster-than-light speeds as quickly as their drives to charge. "Cease fire," Shao ordered. "Do not pursue. Let them run." The human fleet stopped shooting. 89 ships still in their original positions, not a single one damaged. Around them floated the debris of 3,000 Valdrath vessels, aboard the Eternal Dominion. Krelnoth sat in his command chair and tried to process what had happened. His fleet was gone. 5,000 ships reduced to fewer than 1,300 in minutes. The humans had barely moved. They had just sat there and executed his forces with clinical precision. "Retreat," he said, his voice hollow. "All ships retreat to the rally point." As his ship prepared to jump away, he looked at the tactical display one more time. The human fleet was still there, still waiting. They had not even bothered to chase him. It was the most insulting thing he had ever experienced. The humans could have pursued. They could have destroyed his remaining ships. But they chose not to. They had made their point. The Eternal Dominion jumped away, leaving behind the wreckage of Valdrath Pride. Back in human space, the news spread like wildfire. Every network carried the footage, shot from long-range probes and observation posts. The galaxy watched as the mighty Valdrath, Imperium, undefeated for 10,000 years, was broken in 14 minutes by a force they outnumbered 56-1. In bars across human colonies, people raised their glasses in celebration. Veterans laughed and slapped each other on the back. Children watched the footage with wide eyes, not fully understanding, but knowing their parents were happy. And on military channels, the message was clear. Humanity had arrived. The galaxy had a new power to respect or fear. The emergency session of the Valdrath Imperial Council was unlike anything in Imperium's history. For the first time in 4,000 years, they were discussing a military defeat. The Grand Chamber on Thesseron Prime was built to inspire awe. Massive columns reached toward a ceiling hundreds of meters high. Holographic displays showed maps of the entire Empire, 847 star systems glowing with the light of Valdrath control. But today, those displays seemed to mock them. Emperor Thrasiel sat on his throne, ancient and terrible in his ceremonial armor. Around him, the council members argued in voices that echoed through the chamber. "We must strike back immediately," one general insisted. "Every day we wait, we appear weaker." "Strike back with what?" Another council member shot back. "We sent 5,000 ships. Fewer than 1,300 returned. In 14 minutes, the humans destroyed 3,000 of our finest vessels." High Strategos Krelnoth stood before the council, his scales dull with shame. He had commanded the greatest fleet the Imperium had assembled in centuries. He had returned with barely a quarter of his forces. "Explain it to us again," the Emperor said, his voice cold. "How did this happen?" Krelnoth activated the holographic display, showing footage from the battle. The council watched in silence as Valdrath's ships exploded one after another under human fire. "Their weapons are unlike anything in our records," Krelnoth said. "They fire solid projectiles at relativistic speeds. Our shields, designed for energy weapons, cannot stop them. Each projectile hits with the force of a nuclear weapon. They fired with perfect accuracy. Every shot destroyed a ship." A science advisor spoke up, a thin Valdrath named Kesserin. "We have analyzed the wreckage. The projectiles are simple metal slugs accelerated to 40% of light speed using magnetic fields. The technology is not complex. It is simply highly effective." "Why have we never encountered this before?" someone asked. "Because every species we have conquered in the last 3,000 years was technologically primitive," Kesserin replied. "The most advanced had early fusion drives and basic missiles. None had developed gravitational manipulation, AI-assisted targeting, or relativistic kinetic weapons. The humans have all of these." The Emperor's tail lashed in anger. "So we have grown complacent. We have spent millennia beating primitives and forgot what real warfare looks like. Thexler, who had survived the battle, stepped forward. There is something else, Emperor. The way they fought, there was no passion, no rage, no honor. They simply killed us with perfect efficiency. It was like fighting machines, not living beings. Another council member pulled up additional footage. We have been monitoring human communications. Their military coordination is extraordinary. Every ship acts as part of a single organism. Their tactical doctrine is based on something they call the Proxima Wars. What are these Proxima Wars? The Emperor asked. Kesserin brought up translated human historical records. 200 years ago, humanity nearly destroyed itself. Multiple factions fought with nuclear weapons, biological weapons, AI-controlled combat systems. Entire colonies were wiped out. Their home world came close to being uninhabitable. The weapons they used on us, they were originally designed to kill each other. The chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. Humanity had fought itself with weapons designed to kill beings just as intelligent and resourceful as themselves. Every tactic, every strategy, every weapon system had been refined through wars against opponents who could think and adapt and learn. The Valdrath, by contrast, had spent millennia conquering species that could barely fight back. We need a new strategy, the Emperor said finally. Clearly, our traditional approach will not work. What are our options? The military council began discussing possibilities. Develop new shields that could stop kinetic weapons. Design ships specifically to counter human tactics. Perhaps attempt boarding actions where Valdrath warriors might have an advantage in close combat. Then a junior intelligence officer, barely old enough to have scales, raised his hand. Your Majesty, there's another problem. The subject species are watching. The Emperor turned his golden eyes on the young officer. Explain. The officer activated a new display showing communication intercepts from across the Empire. The battle footage is spread throughout our territory. The subject species have seen the Valdrath defeated. There are already reports of unrest, small acts of rebellion, refusals to pay tribute. The humans have shown everyone that the Imperium can be beaten. This was the real danger. The Valdrath control their empire through fear and the perception of invincibility. If that perception shattered, 800 star systems might rise in rebellion. The empire could collapse from within. Then we have no choice, the Emperor said. We must commit everything. Assemble the Grand Armada, 300,000 ships. We will drown the humans in numbers. Even their superior weapons cannot stand against that. The council erupted in discussion. 300,000 ships was 1/3 of the entire Valdrath military. It would leave other regions vulnerable. It would take months to assemble. But what other option was there? It will be done, Krelnoth said, though his voice lacked confidence. Meanwhile, on Luna, the capital of the Terran Federation, a very different discussion was taking place. The Federation Council Chamber was modest compared to the Valdrath throne room. Simple chairs arranged in a circle, holographic displays showing data rather than symbols of power. The people here wore business attire, not ceremonial armor. Secretary General Okafor stood at the center, reviewing the latest intelligence reports. The Valdrath are assembling a massive fleet. Our estimates suggest 300,000 vessels. They are pulling ships from across their entire empire. Admiral Shao attended via holographic projection from the Indomitable. 300,000, that is a significant force. Can we stop them? One council member asked. Shao considered the question carefully. In a direct battle? Possibly. Our weapons are superior, but at some point numbers matter. We would take casualties, significant casualties. So we negotiate, another council member suggested. We have proven we can defend ourselves. Perhaps now they will be willing to discuss terms. No. Everyone turned to look at Okafor. The Secretary General had been quiet during most of the meeting, but now he spoke with authority. If we negotiate now, after their first defeat, we look weak. Every species in the galaxy will see that the Valdrath can force us to the negotiating table through sheer numbers. We will face challenges from everyone, constantly testing to see if we will back down. Admiral Shao nodded slowly. The Secretary General is correct. We need to establish that humanity is not to be challenged, ever, under any circumstances. What do you propose? Okafor asked. Shao smiled, though there was no warmth in it. We introduced them to Terran strategic doctrine. Phase 2 operations. We don't fight their fleet. We dismantle their empire. She pulled up a tactical map of Valdras space. They are pulling ships from across their territory to assemble this grand armada. That means their infrastructure is vulnerable. Shipyards, supply depots, communication relays, fuel stations, all defended by minimal forces. You want to attack their infrastructure? A council member said, while they are gathering to attack us. Exactly. We use small strike groups, fast ships with cloaking capability. They hit targets, destroy critical infrastructure, and disappear before reinforcements arrive. We don't try to hold territory. We just break things. Another council member was frowning. That seems ruthless. It is ruthless, Shao agreed. It is also effective. The Valdrath expect us to defend our territory and fight their fleet. We will not give them that battle. Instead, we will show them that declaring war on humanity means watching your empire burn. The council debated for hours. Some argued for a more diplomatic approach. Others worried about the moral implications of targeting infrastructure. But in the end, the vote was nearly unanimous. Humanity had not wanted this war. But if the Valdrath insisted on fighting, they would learn exactly how humans fought. Okafor sent the final message to Admiral Shao. You have authorization for Phase 2 operations. Show them what it means to challenge Earth. Shao saluted through the hologram. Yes, sir. It's time we taught the galaxy a lesson. We don't fight for glory. We don't fight for honor. We fight to win. As the council meeting ended, Okafor stood alone in the chamber, looking at the map of Valdras space. 300,000 ships were gathering to invade human territory.